Ready when you are.
So hello, we are iRes Productions and we are introducing you to our film Detached. It's a short film which we are producing. So the narrative follows a rough sleeper named Lucy. She lives out on Dartmoor and she chooses to live on Dartmoor to avoid the streets. As she's on Dartmoor, she's beginning to get more and more lonely, and she lives up there with a bucket named Bob as her companion. So she begins to notice someone repeatedly being on the moor, a man named Bruce, who happens to be trying to find her, as he is related. They're related. They're lost siblings. So Lucy doesn't know this at the time, but as the plot progresses and she builds herself up to speak to Bruce, she builds herself up to speak to Bruce, and it's ended up they run into each other literally, and there's a confrontation from there. They meet, and the plot ends there. This is that. So next slide, I believe Chris is.
Sure, okay. So this is just a sort of quick breakdown of all the scenes, which will have different names relating to what happens in them. So the first scene we see, we're introduced to Lucy and also Bob the Bucket, and we sort of start to get an understanding of what Lucy's life is like. And then scene 2, scavenging, establishes the narrative crux and also introduces the character of Bruce, who we don't know what his relation to Lucy is just yet, but that will come later on in scene 4. And then we've got scene 3 named A Twat in the Bucket, which is based on one of the lines. It sort of introduces the sort of dilemma and also establishes the relationship between Lucy and Bob, where you see Bob as this sort of punching bag for Lucy, because when she eats, she sits down and sort of talks to Bob about her life decisions and her issues and things like that. And that's where you get the dilemma, because she can't talk to normal people as a result of her rough upbringing. With scene 4, it's mainly sort of a montage between Lucy's normal daily routine, which we see in the first scene anyway, but also she starts to get an interest in Bruce. She wants to sort of get the courage to sort of help him, and in this as well, we see that Bruce goes around talking in the local town to local people, trying to find out this myth, which is why it's called Search for the Myth, because Lucy is regarded as a sort of local legend of this forest girl, but we also see that they're both related as well. And then in scene 5, we finally see Lucy sort of talking to the bucket, saying that she really wants to go and meet Bruce, and it's almost narrative progression, because with the help of Bob, she sort of builds up a bit of confidence to actually go and talk to Bruce. Scene 6, Morning Rush, it's the next morning. It's just a sort of a little bit of comedic segment where we see Lucy sort of getting up, and she says she's late, she's really frustrated, she doesn't know what to do, puts on a hat and then just goes. And then we have scene 7, which is the climactic final scene, no longer separated, relation to the title, which is called Detached, because although we don't get a conclusive ending, the audience will see that Bruce makes the realization that he's found his sister, and that's it really. You get a bit of an equilibrium.
Lucy is a very reserved character. She's basically keeping her own mind to herself. Like she goes by every day, doing what she normally does, collecting wood, stuff like that. But many people see her as a lone wolf just because she's been on her own so long, and pretty much it. Like, she doesn't really want to live on the street, so she started to live on the moors, because if she looked on the street, she would go to bad habits, such as like drugs or smoking and stuff like that. So she didn't really want to do that, so she lives on the moors now, and that's where people know her from.
So we have Bruce, and Bruce is quite a energetic character. He's quite childish in a sense, but he's very outgoing and endearing. So he's an experienced hiker, just for plot reasons. So he wears windproof jackets, stuff like that. And we see how through his lines, he's very comedic in a sense, almost goofy, but not in a more serious tone.
And then we have Bob the Bucket. Now, he does play an important role because Bob is actually a bit of a plot device and allows the story to sort of progress. Because Bob has basically been Lucy's sort of companion ever since she's run away from her orphan home, which she hints at in the first scene. We're going to have like an emotionless face, so sort of a neutral expression, sort of engraved onto the bucket. Mainly because we want Lucy to realise that she needs to stop talking to a bucket and actually talk to someone, i.e. her brother. We're gonna sort of put dents in it, sort of put scratches as well, just to show that Bob has been there since Lucy has run away, sort of strengthening the bond that they have as companions of each other. And as I've already said, helps sort of Lucy to make decisions. So my main roles for this project are set decorator, so I make sure all the sets that we go to are not only ready to be shot, but also as risk-free as possible. On top of that as well, location manager, so I've sort of decided which locations we were showing when we went on the recce. We're going to actually shoot certain scenes in, but my main role for on-set is camera operator. So obviously I've made sort of decisions beforehand about the types of shot and the focus as well, for reasons when I've gone through research, which I'll get into in a minute. And then also the decisions on grips, lenses, and also how we're going to sort of stabilise shots as well. So as you can see on the board, I'm going to be using a Canon 600D, Canon 35mm lens, which is from college. I'm going to use my own 54mm zoom lens. I'm going to use a couple of tripods as well as a slider. I'm going to use Ronin for some shots as well. And obviously SD cards, I've got like 3 of those when I use them. So on set, my main role is to sort of not only stick to the shots that have been sort of created, but also make sure that I'm able to perform those and stick to rules such as the 180-degree rule. Sort of research, these are sort of 3 main films I've been looking into, so Castaway, Hot Fuzz, and Skyfall as well. With Castaway, I sort of saw there was a real close relationship between Tom Hanks and Wilson, the bull obviously, and sort of the way that he shot them. Now I've changed it a little bit because in some of the shots you see with Wilson and Tom Hanks, as you can see there, you have both the bull and Tom Hanks, whereas in ours, which you'll see in the scene that we're breaking down, we're going to pretend, like we're going to treat Bob the Bucket as an actual person, so it'll be over the shoulder shots for both characters, in order to sort of strengthen that connection that they have had. With Hot Fuzz, I looked into sort of the way, sort of focus along with Roger Deakins, that's it, and the way he uses shallow focus as well. So those are the 3 main films I've really been researching, but I have been looking at other short films to sort of establish those sort of things.
Lighting is, as you guys know, is very important in film. So in all the scenes, apart from scene 3, I will be mainly going by what the weather's like really. So it's like quite natural, but with just a little bit of hint of our lighting to help it. So say if it's sunny, we don't really need that much lighting as such, just due to the weather, but on the other hand, if it's really dark, we're going to need more lighting and just stuff like that.
The sound, we're going to be focusing a lot on ambience to emphasize the idea of how like Lucy's living in the wild and how she's almost kind of in touch with nature, and yeah, the reason she's out there in the first place, which is she prefers the environment over out on the streets. Things like wildlife and leaves rustling and things like that are going to be quite key to emphasize the last point again, but mainly the fact that she's so isolated and there's no human or man-made noises around. That's quite important because we want to show how isolated she is out on the moor. We have backup sounds available, but we hope to get most of our sounds done on set with like ambient tracks and things like that. buzz noise, and also we have a soundtrack for when Lucy's trekking along the moor, which is quite somber, I guess. It's like it's quite apocalyptic. So we don't have it to show, but yeah, it's quite empty.
Alright, so my main job role is an editor, so most of my work would be done within out of filming and in post-production. But I'm also assistant camera operator and sound assistant, so I'll be making sure everything's working properly. And as I'm the editor, I might have some ideas like for transitions that you can actually do with cameras to add in, so see if these guys like it. If not, well, it's just an idea, so yeah. Right, so the research I've been doing is, well, I first started researching the Grand Tour because I really enjoyed their editing techniques, like the rapid shots, but obviously that isn't the same narrative as what we're doing, but I was just looking at colour grading as well. They used, so the editor of the Grand Tour, he also edited Top Gear as well, is Dan James, and I just mainly aimed at, well, I researched his colour grading. So the main film I actually researched was Castaway, because that was the most similar narrative to ours. And so the editor was called Arthur Schmidt. I don't know how you say his surname. But he was actually the editor for Forrest Gump as well, and they obviously both with Tom Hanks. So they both have a similar colour grade. I don't know if you guys can see from that photo in the top right. It's slightly saturated with a blue tint, and that's what overall our kind of group was looking for. And especially for the scene that's coming up later, which I'll go into in a second. But yeah, I was just looking for a blue tint with slightly saturation.
So, as director, I'm responsible for the crew and the actors. So, I am the one in the end who has to make sure everyone's on track and has everything they need for the scene, and making sure everyone works in cohesion for the shot to look perfect. So, I'll be working with Chris, Matt, Lewis, and Ollie all simultaneously for lighting, sound, especially Chris for how the shots are composed and stuff like that. The actors, while I'm sure they're very experienced, I need to direct them how I want them to act and what works for the scene and for the narrative. My responsibility has been throughout the production, so it's not where I say Matt, who has other jobs definitely throughout. His main